Thanks. Thanks, James. Much appreciated. I assume everybody can hear me clearly. It's okay, great. It's great to be here. Thank you to ITWeb. Thanks for that introduction, and welcome to everyone. I'm going to start straight away. There's quite a bit to share, but I'll welcome any questions. If you want to post them separately, that's also fine. So this particular presentation is kind of setting the scene. It's contextualizing. When we talk about business process management, we talk about automation, we have to think about digital transformation and AI-driven digital transformation. And I think it's very important to think about business and people and how we can thrive in the smart technology era. So I'm going to start straight away. I recently wrote a book called Democratizing AI to Benefit Everyone. And the reason I mentioned that is in the book, I also talk quite a bit about business process automation as one of the 5 pillars. And in this talk, I'll be talking a bit more about what that also means. But it's all part of there's obviously a number of components to digital transformation, and I'll be speaking to those kind of things. And I think people, processes, data, all of these kind of things are incredibly important. So I'm going to start off with just quickly talking about how people, businesses can thrive. What is the impact of AI, automation? Talk about the man-machine intelligence continuum. I think it's very important to understand the era that we live in. And so when businesses are not are reluctant to go ahead and implement these technologies, I think it's important to look at the bigger picture. And that's what I'm going to quickly talk about, just set the scene with specifically. So the smart technology era is just my name for the 4th industrial revolution. It's obviously broader than just the industrial revolution. It's the information revolution as well. And we've seen these kind of definitions also from the World Economic Forum, talking about the fusion of new technologies that's kind of blurring the lines between the physical, the digital, and the biological worlds. And it's so impactful that it also impacts not only disciplines and economies and industries, but also challenging ideas about what it means to be human. So, and this is, it's coming, we talked about it, it sounded like hype, but this is really turning out to be the case around smart technology. So what I would like to quickly just sketch, I talked about this broader perspective. As we instrument the world, and I think with the internet specifically, we've started to instrument society and civilization. We created a hyper-connected world. Because of that, we've generated so much data that it opened the door even more for automation and specifically for AI. And that's what I call the smart technology era. It's now the opportunity to use smart technologies in ways to help society thrive. But we can also use it in bad ways, in ways that could damage us. So we've got to think about doing this in a responsible way. We also need, when we think about automation, it's not just one technology, it's a combination of technologies. There's a bunch of exponential technologies. We know decentralized ledger technology, blockchain technology is playing a massive role. We've heard about decentralized autonomous organizations. We've heard about AI-driven smart contracts or AI-driven blockchain type of solutions. So those are examples, but not only that, the world, if we think about exponential technologies, we know about compute sensors, 3D printing, robotics, drones, neurotech, nanotech. There's so many other technologies that's also impacting, and they're all collaborating, working together. So if we can look at that, and we know, and for me, AI is just a proxy for smart technology. There's obviously other smart technologies. There's robotic process automation, that's part of the package. But all of these smart technologies has an incredible impact on society. And this is kind of a slide that kind of just summarizes some of the impacts. Clearly, it's impacting productivity. It's also impacting effort, time. We take complete daily tasks. If humans don't need to do it, if we can automate certain processes that's routine, then we can do it potentially much quicker and at scale. And there's a bunch of other things that I also list there. There's privacy, transparency, ethics. There's also expectations. When we see Amazon and Netflix and the way things are, AI-driven recommendations are working, we expect that also from public services and from all other companies and services as well. So it's kind of this roller coaster that we are on. So that on the one hand. We also know that that in this hyper-connected world, this whole digitization and digital literacy and opportunities that it provides and knowledge that it allows is also becoming one of our largest separators. It's not purely religion, locations, cultures, although we still see a lot of polarization on that level. Clearly, from a business, from a work perspective, employee perspective, in the gig economy, this is a very, very important separator. So we are living really in dangerous times. So actually, this is a quote from my book, Democratizing AI to Benefit Everyone, where I'm saying that we live in extremely dangerous times where it's critical to think on our feet and make the right choices to not only save our lives and get control of the situation, but also shape a better future for all of humanity. So we are really sitting at that precipice. And I think with business, we should set the example in terms of how to do automation in the right way, making sure that we create an AI-driven, human-centric type of workplace as well, where it's a balanced approach between the use of technology and people's role as well. So I'll be talking more about that in this talk. This particular slide, I'm just sketching the potential danger that we are, the dangerous path that we're on. I talk about a problematic trajectory, and I sketch this out in the book as well. And clearly we can see in the world, we struggle with sense making. We've struggled with sense making even around COVID, around many issues as well. Meaning making, wealth gaps, job loss, catastrophic risk, discrimination, data abuse, bias, all of these kind of things. We see Lambda at Google. We talk about things like, is this thing become sentient? We think about things like human agency. Are we going to be locked in? Is there dependence locking? Is there institutional decay, disorder? Is there destabilization of society? So all of these kind of things are problematic. And some of the things that worries us also in terms of automation and in a more a world that's more connected, more instrumented, where there's more sensors, is the danger around surveillance capitalism, which we already see with most of the big tech giants and social media companies, where we can see that there's a lot of monitoring and creation of digital twins of individuals where these kind of systems and AI and smart systems learn people's behavior and make recommendations. Now, this could be used for good and for bad, and people can be exploited, manipulated. So surveillance capitalism is a problem. The other big problem is around state surveillance. If we value things like freedom, and then this becomes a problem as well. So again, we need to think carefully about what is the kind of world that we want to live in and that we want to create. So here on this particular slide, I'm just listing the risks, concerns, and some challenges for society. When I talk about AI, it's really smart technology. It's all about automation, all of those kind of things. And I think this kind of summarizes it quite nicely. The first one is around human agency. So individuals are experiencing a loss of control over their lives. The next one is around data abuse. And I've just talked about surveillance, data use and surveillance in complex systems, which is designed for profit or for exercising power. So surveillance capitalism would be, say, for profit, and state surveillance would be, say, for exercising power. Then job loss with business process automation, AI, and so forth. If we look at jobs in a traditional way, we can also see a scenario where there's a widening of the economic divides, which could lead to social upheaval. We don't want that. Then dependence locking, the reduction of individual cognitive and social survival skills. And the last one is around autonomous weapons, cybercrime, and weaponized information. We know there's deep fakes, there's all sorts of problems around what is real, what's not, and that can cause mayhem. So these are real risks that we need to be concerned about. So what we need is really visionary leadership, collective sense-making, wisdom, practical actions to ensure that humanity and our civilization is moving in the right direction. And how do we do this? We need to fix this in communities, in our businesses, and all of those. And we need to work together to unlock the tremendous potential of these smart technologies. So I just want to end this first part just with two quotes. One from Max Tegmark that was saying that everything we love about civilization is a product of intelligence. So amplifying our human intelligence with artificial intelligence has the potential of helping civilization flourish like never before, as long as we manage to keep the technology beneficial. So that's why it's so important to do that. And then secondly, they said, I'm not going to go through the full quote there, but Klaus Schwab also specifically emphasized the potential positives here. We can enjoy more freedom, better health, high levels of education, and more opportunities to live the lives we value, while suffering less from insecurity and economic uncertainty. And that is clearly still a big problem right now. So in terms of the benefits, and obviously we're going to talk more about this today, during the day as well. Clearly, and what we will see today, even in the case studies around, say, intelligent automation and so forth, we will see that with business process management and AI, it will produce new efficiencies in enhancing human capabilities, and it will also optimize and augment people's lives if we implement it in a correct way. We still place people in center, make sure we still have a human-centered workplace and a civilization and so forth. So the future of work clearly will be impacted. So we will see more solutions coming to the coming forward. But then I would say, for me personally, that's why we've transitioned from AI-driven enterprise solutions to very specific AI-driven platform solutions, and specifically in the areas of healthcare, wellness, education. And quite interestingly, when you look at the potential benefits of AI and smart technology, those are industries and sectors that's being highlighted where smart technology and AI can have probably the biggest impact. So quite excited about that, but clearly we don't want this divide of the haves and have-nots. So that is an issue. But hopefully, if you look at the future of education and you're looking at individualized learning, adaptive learning, 21st century skills, smart skills, if we can ensure that as many people as possible can have access to information and technology and are connected, then we can actually create that better world. So that is clearly a very, very important thing. And the last slide on this section is, this is just some solutions to address AI's anticipated negative effects. Clearly, we need collaboration across borders, stakeholder groups. I would say for any business, it needs to be thinking about stakeholder capitalism. Think about your users, the employees, the shareholders, all of those kind of things. We need to think about how do we improve that collaboration. We need to develop policies to ensure that the development of AI will be directed to augment humans and the common good. And we need to shift our priorities of economic, political, and education systems to empower individuals. For me, that is kind of front and center in a lot of the things that I'm talking about. Now, this is a slide from PwC that I've used many times. But what I like about this is it's kind of sketching out this journey from assisted to augmented to autonomous intelligence. And this is like the man-machine intelligence continuum. And we can control this, even though it feels like a runaway train, and we will probably see a bigger market size for autonomous intelligence as sketched out here. There will always be assisted intelligence, augmented intelligence, and autonomous intelligence, and solutions implemented over that spectrum. So, and one can look at the details and examples of that. And I think what you typically see with assisted intelligence is that the nature of tasks don't change, and tasks are automated. But with augmented intelligence, you see the nature of tasks change, and humans inform machines, and machines inform humans. And with autonomous, you actually see that exactly, but you see the nature of tasks change, and you see decisions are automated. And today's discussions with some of the other talks, you will see a lot more of these kind of decisions being automated, and also situations where machines learn continuously. And we already see autonomous vehicles and smart investments. We see this autonomous intelligence deployed. This is also kind of a useful man-machine intelligence quadrants to have a look at this in this way. So on the top, you see human in the loop, and you see no human in the loop. And then on the y-axis, we see hardwired specific systems and then adaptive systems. And this is, for me, a nice way of categorizing the way intelligence solutions can be implemented. So if human is in the loop and it's hardwired, it's specifically assisted intelligence. So here we see AI systems that assist humans in making decisions or taking actions. So it's hardwired, there's no learning from these interactions. So that is obviously opposite adaptive systems, where you actually see more kind of learning, continuously learning, where decision-making and continuous learning happens with these kind of solutions. And then when we go to the right-hand side, no human in the loop. Here we see automation that's hardwired, no human in the loop, that's pure automation. And that is typically automation of manual and cognitive tasks, like robotic process automation that we see. But then autonomous intelligence would be systems where there's no humans in the loop, but also adaptive, where AI systems can adapt to different situations and act autonomously without human assistance. Maybe humans can help with the calibration of these kind of systems, but when it's operational, it actually it acts on its own. So that's the difference there. This is just another way of looking at it. I'm not going into too much detail here, but it's worthwhile looking at understanding these kind of things as well. So on the y-axis, we've got data complexity, going from structured, stable, low volume to unstructured, volatile, high volume. And then on the x-axis here, we're looking at work complexity. So routine, predictable, rules-based, going to ad hoc, unpredictable, judgment-based. So when you look at it like that, you can also divide 4 quadrants, and you can sketch out on the left-hand corner, you see automation or automate, and on the right hand, you see augmentation. So you can see clearly with augmentation, there's more the innovation type of model, where things are more unstructured, volatile, high volume, ad hoc, unpredictable, judgment-based. And clearly, this is where humans can operate and where AI can be used to assist here as well. So just quickly, so how companies are adopting AI. So this is also a nice way of looking at it. And you can also see some industries where there's higher adoption than others, but there's also specific characteristics of early adoption. So clearly, I think you've got to make sure that the business are instrumented. So that means there's sensors. It means that there's digitally mature. There needs to be adoption of AI in core activities. There's typically multiple technologies. And there obviously needs to be C-level support for this. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere. And there's obviously a focus on growth over savings. And I'm going to show a little bit about the business value drivers, which I think is absolutely core and should be front and center around these kind of things. So when we think about value drivers of a business, this is just a way of kind of categorize things. And for any automation and for any kind of AI-driven digital transformation, these are still the things that are very key to any kind of business. It could be consumer-facing business, or it could be industrial kind of businesses. Now, if you look at both consumer-facing business as well as industrial type of businesses, for both these businesses, increasing operational efficiency, effectiveness, and revenue is critically important. And it's really all about how can we increase productivity and revenue? And how can we reduce risk and lower costs? And you will see very specific value drivers here. And you can see there's a drive towards increasing automation, improving processes, and in the industrial world is also ensuring that equipment is available. So all of that will enhance your productivity. And if you want to enhance your revenue, it's all about increasing throughput, yield, and quality, especially in the industrial world. And then consumer-facing world, it's cross-selling, upselling, recommendations. We already see a lot of that happening. But there's also ways to reduce risks. So process and equipment failure. If processes don't work, equipment don't work, there's failure, then obviously it's going to hurt productivity. Customer churn, fraud, waste and abuse, cybersecurity, huge risks that needs to be looked at. And then obviously lowering costs. So eliminating redundancy, energy, raw material usage, operation and maintenance. So these kind of things really addresses some of the key value drivers. But then with data, we can create tremendous strategic value for both industrial businesses as well as consumer-facing businesses. And when you deploy AI-driven digital transformation and these type of solutions, it could lead to faster, better, more proactive decisions, which is really important if we want to do it right. And you want to make sure you've got the optimal mix between people and systems making decisions, and people being assisted in their decision making. So that's a huge advantage, strategic advantage. But also with data, there's more opportunities to create new business models or new revenue growth opportunities, better collaboration, and all of those kind of things. So I think this is a very important bucket for me, the creation of strategic value. And then finally, on the customer-facing side, clearly, we're moving towards a world. If you think about the metaverse, you think about the way Amazon and the retail companies and financial services companies and so forth operating, it's all about that real-time, on-demand, digital, personalized service delivery, assistance, and advice. And to make that seamless, you have to have automated systems implemented, because it's about enhancing efficiencies. There's, for instance, here with financial services, automated and augmented underwriting. You want to reduce the process times and costs, all of those kind of things. And you also want to have more targeted sales and marketing. And obviously, at the back of this is your 360-degree view of the customer, so you can actually think about next best actions in the right way, and do that in a proper way. Now, this is a very important way of looking at contextualizing also business process automation, because this is the bigger picture. So when we think about the 5 elements of successful AI transformation, it starts with the intent, the use cases, sources of value. And that is really the business value drivers that I just talked about before. But then data, critically important. You need to look at your data ecosystems. The technology that you use, critically important. You need to look at all sorts of processes. You need to think about workflow integration, but you also need to think about people and have an open culture and organization. So this is a slide that I've used many times before, but you can see on the x-axis we've got time. And if you want to accelerate the path to value generation, you want to go from here to there, and you just want to accelerate this. Clearly, you need all 5 pillars, all 5 elements. Data availability, you need to think about your technology, distributed computing, analytics tools and platforms. We do have all of these components and technology available, so it's a matter of implementing that. People, data science skill availability, but people making sure that when you implement these kind of solutions, that people's roles are redefined and that they can work in optimal fashion with the new technology. So the organizational alignment is critical, and process and change management is absolutely critical. You can't just implement a robotic process management automation solution without considering all of these kind of things, and specifically looking at what's the impact. And this is just laying out a little bit more detail. I'm just going to, if I focus on the process side here, as today's focus is on that, integrating AI automation in workplace processes, and it's all about optimizing human-machine interface. All of those kind of things, very, very important. And from a people perspective, we need to build trust in these systems. In AI's insights, we need to reskill the workforce to ensure complementarity, and we need to have an open, collaborative culture. So it's very, very important that one does this in a really proper way. And then one can map this, and I think this is just a way of looking at all 5 pillars: intent, technology, people, data, and processes. And very important to look at driving this from an ad hoc approach to a more optimized approach. So you can actually have these stages. This is actually the Industrial Data Corporation's Big Data Analytics Maturity Scale, where they define very specifically the stages. And you can have each one of these stages, you can quantify it for all 5 pillars: for intent, for process, for data, people, technology. And you can see to what extent are we moving towards more optimized stages around this. Is it still opportunistic or repeatable? Is it managed? Do we have continuous improvement, like we see with optimize? So those kind of things are critically important. And obviously here I'm just showing again business process management lifecycle. This is obviously the stages that you go through. So this is how you drill down. If you go think about processes, one needs to think carefully about, this is just spelling out how to really do a deep dive into this and think about how to do this in a proper way. And you can see, you obviously start with design. You need to think about the model, think about how to improve your process. You need to think about the execution, test a new business process with a small group. This is like typical, if you think about any kind of solution, you do small pilots, you show it, you demonstrate how it works, and then you can continue. But you need to monitor, you need to have KPIs to measure the success of your improvements, and you need to continuously monitoring this. This is exactly, anyway, playing into what the Industrial Data Corporation is talking about when we talk about these stages going from ad hoc to optimized as well. So there's obviously a bunch of business process management tools, and I think today there will be more discussions about that, so I won't go into too much detail around that. It's just great that there's really tools that help with this. And then there's also some top features that could be, if you think about business process management systems, that are highlighted here, that I think is critically very important when you evaluate these kind of technology solutions and ensuring that this could be used in an optimal way. So I've got a few slides just here talking about in terms of achieving organizational alignment. I think very, very important. This is a process in itself as well, as you can see here. There's a process of validating big data and moving it into production. So this process also needs to be handled in a proper way. And again, the two questions is it demonstrating value? And then secondly is, how do you operationalize it? And how do you do it in a most effective way as possible? And there's many, many questions. You obviously start with the value drivers. What are the big game changer things that will make a big impact on the business? You need to think about the future state capability scenarios, and you need to define the benefits and roadmap. So these are things that you still need to go through. You've got to be clear. You've got to be very systematic in the way you approach this. And then there's obviously decisions around, it depends on businesses. It's not a clear-cut decision. For some businesses, it's better to decentralize data science, AI. For other businesses, it's better to centralize, or it could be on a spectrum around these kind of things. But again, there's a value chain here. There's certain processes at play. So even with this, one needs to think very smartly about how do you approach these kind of things. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly go to the last part of my presentation here. So this was just the way I looked at AI-driven solutions and how we can implement that to impact the business in the most optimal way. So, and it was just kind of categories. So the first one is really around personalized. So we create smart personalization of customer products and services. So for any customer-facing business, this is absolutely essential. And this is where AI can probably have one of the biggest impacts, automation, massively important. But then also in terms of engage, helping people and businesses working smarter at scale. So where you can have assistance, you can have with email, HR, learning, education, those kind of things as well. You can implement solutions that can make a tremendous impact also for your employees, where things really help quite a bit. And then also, if you think about the third category here is enhance, so smart automation and enhancement of business processes and systems. And there's a number of things that you can do here. You can look at detect causes of where there's potential problems, trigger events and so forth. You can implement solutions that can pick it up automatically. The more you instrument business processes and systems, you can do that, especially in the industrial world, where you can immediately see, I've got, say, a runaway temperature in a furnace. You pick it up, you can in real time detect what's the underlying causes. And you can have you can actually have non-linear control solutions that can optimize things in real time. So those are things that's anyway happening in the industrial world. But clearly in the customer-facing world, you can see the same thing. If you think about security, if you think about fraud, you want to pick those things up in real time, very, very quickly. And then the final category that I have here is just the sense. So when you instrument, when you've got audio, vision, geospatial, IoT, we can implement systems where you can make machines smarter to sense and interpret the world around us. And obviously, AI solutions on that front can have a massive impact on business, but also on everything about society in general as well. Okay, so I'm just gonna skip a few things here. I just want to quickly go to just the last part. So I know Johan Stein is going to talk about algorithmic decision making. So in the last 11, 12 minutes, I just want to quickly talk about ethics and algorithmic decision-making and trustworthy AI systems, and also talk about people, processes, and the people specifically. How do people thrive? What do we do in a world where more and more things are being automated? So I want to talk about those kind of things just briefly. So when you look at individual harms, clearly there's individual harms and collective social harms potentially here. So with hiring, employment, insurance, social benefits, housing, education, we can see illegal discrimination, unfair practices, and we don't want that. So when we think about algorithmic decision-making, we want to make sure we've got transparent systems where we don't have individual harm. In collective social harms, we see a loss of opportunity, clearly. Then, if you think about financial services, and you think about algorithmic decision-making with credit or differential prices of goods, that is also problematic. And again, collectively, you see economic loss. And then also on the social front, loss of liberty, increased surveillance, stereotype reinforcement, dignitary harms. And then on this collective social harms, you see social stigmatization. So clearly, these are things that we need to be very careful of. So that's why it's very important. And this is not only for on a governmental basis. No, the European Union has got this trustworthy AI framework, and there's also many other countries and organizations and the partnership on AI and the big tech giants also talking about frameworks for trustworthy AI, responsible AI. But these are things that's very, very important for every business. So one needs to think about lawful AI, ethical AI, robust AI. So if you think about ethical AI, there are 4 principles. The respect for human autonomy. So even when we implement robotic process automation, AI, we need to think about these ethical principles and see, is this principles that my business is actually looking at deploying or adhering to? Respect for human autonomy, prevention of harm, fairness, explicability. And then what is the key requirements for that? Clearly, when you implement automated solutions, you need to look at human agency and oversight. Even if it's autonomous solutions, you need to think about a calibration. You need to think about the objective function. When things are, say, you've got systems that optimize systems, we still need to calibrate those kind of things, and there needs to be some oversight. But then also technical robustness and safety is critical. How do we make sure that happens? Privacy, data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination, fairness, societal, environmental well-being, and accountability. These are things that are absolutely essential for any AI or automated system that we implement. And then the last few slides, I'm just quickly going to talk about the impact of automation on jobs. Clearly, what we will see, and we can see there are some example occupations here, but what we see on this particular slide is that there's an element of or a percentage of tasks that are repetitive, that are routine, that can be automated, pretty much in all jobs. There are some jobs here listed here, like psychiatrists and legislators, that they say no, but that is changing as well. So clearly, this is the world we live in. So we need to be more alert in defining more human-centric jobs and tasks, and making sure that we can interplay with automated systems. So in the last few slides here, I'm just kind of, as part of the sense-making process around what jobs and tasks within jobs will be harder to replace with AI technologies. And it's clear. Kai-Fu Lee, an AI expert and founder of Innovation Ventures, said that every job which takes less than 5 seconds to think will be done by robots. But if you think about basically tasks with minimal routine and repetition, so one that requires creativity, are difficult to learn through simple observation, require hands-on manipulation, do not involve the use of large data sources, are dependent on human interaction and interpersonal communication, and require social perception. Clearly, those jobs is jobs where we should focus on. And there was also from the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, where they emphasize also emotional intelligence and technical intelligence. There will be more jobs created, and there will be skills required in that regard. And then in my book, Democratizing AI to Benefit Everyone, I also talk about, there's quite a bit of sense making on this topic. Richard Baldwin's book, Robotics Upheaval, very good. You can read that, where they talk about white-collar jobs will be swept away faster by digital change than in any previous economic transformation. Very important to look at those kind of things. Richard Freeman counter that again. He thinks that it will be more nuanced or more mosaic in nature. It won't be a sweeping tidal wave. And it probably depends on industry and type of business as well. Then Callum Chase in Economic Singularity talked about AI-driven machines rendering most humans unemployable. So he's talking about that. Martin Ford also talking about the wholesome automation of white-collar jobs and hollowing out of the middle-class jobs. And then Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee from MIT, they had a quite an interesting book with the second machine age, but then also with the next one, they talk machine platform crowd, where they first talk about bounty and spread. And obviously the spread is the inequality of labor markets and wealth, and ever bigger differences among people and economic success. And basically we talk about the great decoupling, which is really problematic. So we need to think about business economics, how we design, even capitalism, how we look at that as well. We know on the other side with bounty, technology is having a huge impact, because it's really, bounty is the increasing volume, variety, and quality, and the decreasing cost of many offerings brought by technological progress. And clearly we want that, but how can we bridge that gap? And I know that Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler in Abundance and Bold, they reckon, they're obviously very positive and optimistic, and they reckon that in radical abundance, in this, we can overcome the spread, but obviously we still need to do it. So that is part of the problem. Kai-Fu Lee also had an interesting perspective in AI Superpowers, where he talked about two kinds of job loss, not just one. There's obviously the one-to-one replacements or replacing tasks within jobs, but there's also a second one where it's like ground-up disruptions, where AI startups are reimagining industries from the ground up and looking for new ways to satisfy the fundamental human need driving the industry. So that will cause like bigger disruptions potentially. So one needs to think about these kind of things, be very considerate of where this could go. We can really be AI lead and the rest, AI rich and AI poor countries. So very important that we don't have countries and even continents left behind. I do talk about that in my book quite a bit, ways that we can address this as well. We can't rest on our laurels. Yeah, so very, very important. Okay, see, I've got only 2-3 minutes left. So what I will do is just the last few things, just a few slides, and I will stop. Also very important to think about, there's lots of analysis being done. So the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is just their 20th fastest growing declining jobs. It was quite interesting for me to note that the health-related jobs and even computer and mathematical type of jobs, that's clearly going to grow. Office admin support jobs, if you look at that's clearly going to decline as well. So one needs to think about these kind of things. So where do we push people? Where do we create more opportunities? One needs to look at these kind of things. Lots of interesting information that helps us in doing this. The other big one is also which industries are embracing remote work. And clearly, I see this in my own company and companies as well with software and IT services. We've got people across the globe participating in that. But we also see this with media, communications, and wellness, and fitness, and healthcare, and so forth, where you see more kind of remote work at play. And then the last few slides here is just talking about, and for me, it's close to my heart as well. I wrote a book on democratizing AI to benefit everyone, and how can we shape a better future in the smart technology era. And if we think about the workplace, we need to create more humanistic jobs. And this was, and I maybe end with this, Kai-Fu Lee at this TED Talk, where he talked about AI's impact over the next 5 to 15 years. And basically, when you look at jobs, you can look at it from on this spectrum: repetitive, routine, optimizing, complex, and creative. You can look at it like that. But you can actually say, let's look at it differently. We say let's still look at optimization and creativity and strategy, but let's add another dimension. And we can add more of these dimensions. But if we say we value compassion, for instance, and it could be other things as well, other human traits, then you can actually create quadrants here where you can say the top quadrants is where compassion is more needed, and the bottom ones are where compassion is not really needed. And then when you look at AI, you will see that when things can be automated and optimized and where compassion is not needed, you can deploy AI solutions. When you move to the right here, you can see more human plus AI because there's creativity and strategy at play. And when you go to compassion, you can say, okay, it's still optimizing. We still have AI systems or automation systems, but we want the warm embrace of humans. And we value that. And you can create jobs and works around that. And then clearly, when you're into compassion and creativity and strategy, you will see human plus AI having we can really excel. So but anyway, so this is just a nice way of sketching it out. On this particular diagram, I've also listed augmented intelligence, autonomous intelligence, where they all fit in. And on that note, I think my time is up, and I want to thank you very much, and hope you have a fantastic day. If there's any questions, I'm happy to address that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jacques Ludik. We are unfortunately on the point of time, so I'm not going to be taking questions for Dr. Ludik. But sir, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation, capturing a lot of the broad areas there. And I do find the point that we're talking more and more about blending AI and people. And I was thinking about that point about how do we shift skills in this world. And I don't know if you saw recently, GitHub and Microsoft released, they made public a tool, an AI tool, costs you $10 a month, teaches you, helps you with programming. Just really, really great tool that they've been testing on high-end programmers who use this, and now they're bringing it more into the low-code arena as well. But the whole point of that tool is you work with the AI, or rather the AI works with you. And I do think about when we say automating processes, automating things out there, I think of all things of McDonald's workers. They do a fairly simple job. And if you think about it, there's already a tremendous amount of automation happening there. They don't measure out those cups. That's a machine that decides, okay, that much goes in, and there we have it. Yet, I love the fact that there's a person there to deal with, to give me that. And even McDonald's, you've seen, they've put up the screens where you push the buttons and you can make your order. There's still a person delivering that to you. So maybe that is where we are leading towards. It's not a question of just what do we automate and make more efficient. It's really what is the new blend of processes and people. There's always a saying, people, processes, and technology. Well, maybe that is the point. We don't remove the people. We don't make it more efficient just for the company. We actually ask, how do we enhance the person? And if we enhance the person, do we then make the process more efficient? Do we then get a better outcome? I'm not saying that's the way we should be going forward, but it is definitely an emerging paradigm out there, and I think that touched on some of that. Thank you very much, Dr. Jacques Ludik, for that. He is the founder and CEO of Cortex Logic, and as you can see, incredibly well-versed in artificial intelligence, ML, as well as the cultures around that. If you would like to get in touch with him, please go just meet with the event organizers outside. I'm sure they can make something happen if you want to have a discussion with him or send him some questions.